Hi, I'm Rona, here again with week 1 of our winter project Quilt Along, Charming Spiral. Welcome to week 1 of our winter quilt along, Charming Spiral. I am so excited to get started with this project because, like I said in the intro video a couple days ago, I've never used mini charms and I've never made a quilt almost exclusively with pre-cuts. So this is going to be, I think, a super fun quilt. So the first thing is first, if you haven't already, head over to ronatheribbeter.com and you can get registered to receive the weekly newsletters for this quilt along and download all your fabric requirements so you can follow along with all the fun. So speaking of fun, we're going to jump in. So for this week, we're going to be doing strip piecing, and it's strip piece block A and block B. So block A has 4 strips and block B has 3. Now I'm doing my blocks using the jelly roll, and that means that they're all 2.5-inch strip pieces, right? However, one of the fabrics that is in the requirements is the background fabric. This is the fabric that I'm using for my background. These I'm going to have to actually cut the strips for. So I have a quick little video on how I cut my strips. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take an end. And when you're doing this, never assume that your edge is straight. Even if you got it at the quilt shop and you watch them cut it with a ruler, doesn't matter. Never assume that it's a straight edge. What I want to do is I want to make sure, first of all, I do not use the mat. I use the ruler to measure. And I want to make sure I can tell that this comes in. So I want to make sure the edge of my ruler is before that cutoff there. Here on the ruler, you can see that there are cross lines. And these cross lines mark at your 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 3/8, half, etc. So I don't care about which one's which. I just want to make sure that I choose one of those lines all the way across, and I'm going to line it up, again, making sure that the ruler is inside that edge at the top. And I want to make sure that it's lined up perfectly on that line. So now that I know that this is straight and this is on the fold, so you see this is on the fold, right? So now that I know that this edge is straight, this gives me my 90-degree angle. When I go to cut, I put, the rule is you need 3 points of contact for anything to be sturdy, right? For this, we're going to use 5 points of contact, 4 fingers and a thumb. And the reason I do this is so that way you're spreading out the weight instead of, a lot of people I see do this, but all of your weight is centered right here. And if you do that, then you're going to end up, when you cut, you're going to end up pushing your ruler. That's how it slides. And we don't want that, right? So instead, what we're going to do is put this back where I had it. And I'm going to lean onto this hand so it spreads out the weight, right? So the weight is not focused on 1 point, it's on 5. Then I'm going to try and keep my rotary cutter straight up and down. You don't want it at an angle. A lot of people tend to do it at an angle because, you know, we want to see where we're cutting. But you want to keep it straight up and down as much as possible. And I just go just past my hand, and then I move my hand up. So that way you're moving the weight. That gives you an almost perfect cut every time. So now we have our straight edge, and we know that it's straight because we just cut it. So now I'm going to flip it over, which this is a lot of fabric on this little space. That's okay. We can make it work, right? All right. Now, see, if I was smart, I would have cut this down a little bit. That's okay. All right, now we're going to measure 2.5 inches. Again, I do not use the mat. I use the ruler to measure. And since I know this is a straight edge because I just cut it, make sure it's lined up right, then I'm going to come on the ruler. This is a 1/2 inch from the edge to this first line, this orange yellow here, that's a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to come to the 2-inch line, so 1 inch, 2 inches, and I'm going to line it up on that straight edge that I just cut, and I'm going to line it, ooh, maybe, there we go, right on that 2-inch line. And this is where it helps if your fabric is starched and pressed. Okay, so, and again, we're gonna start 5 points of contact with my hand, go up, move my hand, and finish the cut. There you go. So now you have a 2.5 inch strip. Now, and you know that this edge is straight so that when you unfold it, that it's gonna be straight and not wonky. It's gonna be straight. So now that we have our strip pieces cut, now we're gonna stitch them together. So stitching these is pretty simple. It's straightforward. You're literally just right sides together, put one strip along with the other, and stitch down the edge. So we're gonna put these in real fast, speed it up, needle down. I always do needle down. And literally just stitch away. Do you sing when you stitch? Because I sing. I have music, or I'll have a documentary on when I sew. Let me know in the comments, what do you like to have on in the background when you're sewing? We have our first piece stitched together. So now I'm just gonna snip off that end, check my bobbin, because yeah, the machine is supposed to tell me when the bobbin runs out, but it doesn't always do that. So I like to check just to make sure. And then now we are going to add the third strip. So I'm just opening up my strips here. I am not pressing this yet. I am going to press all of them at the very end. So once again, place this one right sides together and check your pattern to make sure that you're putting them in the right order for the fabrics that you have. And then once again, right sides together, gonna stitch this guy out. And trim off the little ends there. Okay, so now we have our strip. Ta-da! Isn't that pretty? So now when I press these, remember we're going to press, not iron. We're going to press with the iron, not iron with the press. So first thing I do, I'm going to press these open, and the only reason, there's no rhyme or reason to it, it's just easier and faster. That's really the only reason I'm pressing these open. You can press them all to one side if you would like, whichever is easiest for you. But I think when I'm pressing them open, and only when I'm pressing open, I finger press them first. That way you can literally just set the iron down onto it. You don't have to worry about wiggling as you go to get those seams open. So once they're all open and pressed, then we have something like this. And as you can see, I've pressed all of my seams open. So now we just need to trim them. And for this, I'm going to use a 12.5 inch ruler and my rotary cutter, which is here somewhere. Found it. Now that we have our strips, we need to first create a straight edge. Just like when we were trimming for the strips, I want to make sure that I have a straight edge to begin with. So I want to cut, plus I need to cut off this selvage here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up. See how that line just goes straight down? And this one should be fairly close. And then you can check your edges to make sure they're pretty centered. They're not exactly straight, but that's okay. And then remember, same thing with cutting the strips. 5 points of contact, leaning on my arm. Take my trusty little rotary cutter, and off we go. So now we know we have a straight line. So now we're going to flip this around, flip it around, flip it around. Okay, and these are going to be 10.5 inches. So I need to find 10.5 inches on my ruler, and I'm going to put that at the edge here. Whoops, put it at the edge right here. And again, I want to make sure that this line or one of the lines is still pretty straight, because if it's not, then we can trim that. So overall, this looks pretty straight for the most part. Looking at my edges here, and it's pretty centered. Okay, good enough for the goose. Okay. That's one. Now, then I'm going to move this down and do another one. And again, I want to make sure that these edges, because sometimes when you're pressing strips, these outer edges tend to get a little stretched out. So, or I should say the outer strips tend to get stretched out a little bit. So I want to make sure with each one that I cut, that I continue to check. See, this is a straight line. And if you can see, I'm not sure if you can see the right angle, but these ends, it kind of goes like this. Instead of a straight, it's at a little bit of an angle. So I'm making sure that this is straight. This is as straight, yep. So I'm gonna cut here, and then I'm gonna turn it around. Now, some people might call this overkill, and that's okay. But I tend to be a little, I don't think I'm a true perfectionist, but there we go. Because I think if I was a true perfectionist, nothing I ever did would be quite good enough. Okay, so now I'm going to do that with each one, and depending on how long your strips are to begin with, you should be able to get 3, if not 4, of these pieces out of them. That's it. That's all she wrote for this week. Like I said, now we have our strip block pieces. This is block B. This is block A. And the only difference is it's 4 strips instead of 3. So you're doing the exact same thing. And next week, we'll be doing block number 2, 5 points. In the meantime, thank you for watching this week, and I'd love to see in the comments what fabrics you guys are using for this project. Are you using green and purple, like I am? Are you using multicolor like the pattern? What kind of fabrics are you using? I'd love to see them. Until next week, thanks guys, happy quilting!